Good morning. Well, good afternoon. So I'm an hour later today. Excuse the state of me. Look at it. I've literally just skidded in the door from being away camping with my beautiful and wonderful friends at Mason Pagans, socially distanced, of course. Yeah, we stayed at the Well Summer campsite, which is between Kingswood and Lenham, just outside of Maidstone, and it was, yeah, well, we went last year and it's just absolutely, it's beautiful and rustic. Morning, Jen, or afternoon, Jen. Hello, my darling. How are you? Another one of my favourite people. Yeah, so we've just literally got back and we're half unpacked, and I haven't even got in and had a cup of tea. And for those of you that know me, you know, coming in and having a cup of tea is one of the first things I do. So today I haven't got a guest, and that's why I'm an hour late. But I did say it's going to be an hour late. Today it's just me, and I'm going to talk to you about the Wheel of the Year. So you'll excuse me if I look an absolute fright. My hair's everywhere, and I'm absolutely camp minging because we decided that our excuse is that we're not lazy mingers. It's that we are going to go for the whole pagan camping experience and just wash the bits that show, if you get my drift. So that's hands and face. Anyway, there you go. So that's enough about me being a minger. So the Wheel of the Year, which is what I was going to talk to you about. So obviously we are aware of where we are in the year, you know, by the seasons. And the seasons, Camp Perry's great. Yeah, it's kind of just like, it's everywhere. But do you know what? It's, you know, I don't come back from camp looking gorgeous. I just come back looking like a wild woman. But then I have been a wild woman. I've been sat around a campfire, barbecuing, crafting. I've got some beautiful crafting we made. Lovely Laura's joined us, I can see, and Shirley's lurking there. Laura was with me at camp, and we had such a great time. We made all sorts of things. We made slate and sea glass pictures. So yeah, and we did some witch wheels, and we did some, what else did we do? We did all sorts of things. But anyway, here we are. So the Wheel of the Year. And now there's some debate about when the Wheel of the Year actually starts. A lot of people call Samhain, spelled Samhain, Samhain. Some people call that the Witch's New Year, which is fine. And obviously that's Halloween. For those of you that perhaps don't know that, I'm going to start in the beginning of the year, just to follow the cycle of the seasons through, to talk to you about that. So obviously, the beginning of the year, we start with Imbolc, which is, some people say the 1st of February, some people say the 2nd of February. Either way, it's the very beginning of February, and it's spelled Imbolk. Some people call it Imbolc, some people call it Imbolc. It doesn't matter, and if you say it wrong, it's because you've read it in a book and you're learning. So really, really don't worry. In fact, that is a huge tip someone taught me when I was saying, look at my little wing of hair here. If you say a word wrong, it shows people that you learnt it from reading a book, not because it's around you, so you're trying to improve yourself. So never feel bad about that. So Imbolc is, and that means lamb's milk, ewe's milk, not lamb's milk, that would be a bit wrong. And that is also known as Candlemas in the religious calendar, the Christian religious calendar. And it's no coincidence that they coincide throughout the year. They're obviously laid over each other. So you can have, that can be a good reason, or that can be a bad reason, depending on your take on it. Obviously, as the Romans brought their Christianity over to these heathen pagan lands, they would have tried to familiarise us with their ways and their customs, and laid their map of the year over ours. So throughout the year, you've got several things that have got a Christian name. Morning, Pam, as well. Nice to see you, watching from Stoke. You have, like, Christmas, obviously, is very near to the winter solstice. I'm just jumping around a moment, but I will go through them. And that's obviously so that the local pagan people felt they were still celebrating their old religion as well as celebrating the new. And that's something that civilizations have done throughout history. The victors come in and put their ways, their regime, their belief system in, and it sort of, you know, overshadows what's there before. So that's a really common thing. So going back to Imbolc, that is also known as Candlemas, and that is traditionally in sort of Avalonian tradition, that is the child, the maiden aspect of the goddess. So there's usually quite a childish energy. People are starting to see signs of spring. People are looking for little buds to appear. People have got through the long winter and they're like, come on, we can start going out again. We can go for nice walks without getting completely cold, snowed in, all the rest of it. And that's quite often associated with the goddess Bridget, bride, who also obviously, it's just something that Jacqueline, when she's back, will talk about, is the saints and the old sort of goddesses or the old deities. So I think Bridget is one of the most common ones. Obviously that's quite very common in Ireland, but it's throughout the UK. So that's then, and that is all about renewal and rebirth, and it's a good time to starting to plant not just the seeds of actual physical flowers, vegetables, plants as you can, but also ideas. And it's a fire festival, which is, you can see that people are coming to the end of the winter. They're looking for those lovely long nights, lovely long days coming in the future. They've had enough of the long nights, should I say. So, and I'm at a slight angle here because I've had to have my phone on charge to do this, because I didn't use my phone and I didn't charge my phone because we were camping. So from there, the wheel turns and you're still in the aspect of the maiden. Now with these aspects of these maidens, of the goddess, I'm doing maiden, lover, mother, crone, because that's the way I learnt it when I first learnt it. People have, like I said before, have popped a queen in somewhere later on. We'll come to that in a minute. We were all queens anyway. So from there, that rolls round to what is effectively spring equinox, which can be between about the 20th and the 23rd of March, and that is when, oh, my husband is watching from the bedroom. He's just come in and flopped on the bed. Good morning, husband. Like I haven't seen you anyway. That is when there's equal balance in the world. There is half light, half dark. That's an astronomical point in the astronomical point in the calendar. And that's a good time for harmony. That's a good time to reassess how things are going, and it's a good time when there's this light and dark. So if you're continuing with the darkness of the winter and looking at your shadow work, looking at what you hope to achieve, what you haven't achieved, what you want to let go, that's a really good time for them. And we were talking about the overlaying of Christian customs or any religion customs with what was deemed pagan customs, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. That's obviously Easter time. I've really got camp hair, sorry about this. I was hoping to get back earlier to have a bath and look half decent, but no, I'm going out later on, so I'll have one in a minute. So that is obviously known as Easter. Now Easter is dependent on the moon. It's dependent on the fullness of the moon at a certain set date in the year. So that's what's known as a movable feast. So it's quite interesting that a Christian tradition of Easter, which we know as Ostara, which isn't strictly the same as Easter, but obviously then the names are very similar, aren't they? That Ostara is allegedly a German Teutonic heathen goddess, I believe. So they are linked, but they're not interchangeable. Ostara is not necessarily Easter, because Easter can be as late as mid-April. I think it was late this year, wasn't it? Because it was around our birthdays, which are April. So anyway, that's Ostara. And again, the idea is still continuing of renewal and rebirth, and the egg and the rabbit, all the traditional things you think of Easter are also symbols of Ostara, of the changes coming, and the idea, the seed, the kernel of change and what's going to happen in the future, that's building. So you've now got the physical egg, you've got the rabbits, obviously, which are completely associated with fertility because they breed hugely. So that brings you to Ostara. And then from there, we move forward in the year, and we're coming out of fire now. And it's interesting that as you come out of fire, we move towards water. This is the Avalonian way of explaining it. So you've come out the maiden energy and you're coming to the lover, and everyone knows Beltane. And although Beltane's a fire festival, which is slightly confusing, but it does come under the water aspect in the Avalonian tradition. So Beltane is the first of May. So we've got May Day, which is a bank holiday, and Beltane, Beltane, sometimes Beltain, depending on how people spell it. Again, if people say it differently. And I was on a little workshop the other week, and someone referred to it as Beltane or something like that, and they sort of pronounced it different. And I said to a friend afterwards, that was a different spelling and pronunciation of Beltane. And because the lady doing the course was American, and my friend Gidge, who, what Gidge doesn't know probably isn't worth knowing, she said that she'd read that there was some thought that is, you know, a more recent thought of pronunciation, a bit like Boudica and Boadicea. That's potentially a new way of saying Beltane. So that is obviously, everybody knows that as the Wild Crazy Sex Festival, and obviously we don't all run around having orgies. Sorry about that. For those of you who want to leave now, please feel free. Oh look, everybody's gone. Anyway, but it is about fertility. It is about renewal, and of course, this is when the maiden becomes the lover goddess. This is when she's ripe. She's turned into the older teenager who is like, look at me, I've got hips, I know how to swing my hips, I've got boobs, I'm feeling sexy, I can feel, you know, the year. Mark's waving away. He's in the other room going, yay. So that is when she's coming into her own sexually. She knows the power she has and the ripeness. So obviously you get the May Day blossoms. So traditionally we've had May Day queens as well. You have May Day as a bank holiday, which I said, and there were traditional the Beltane fires where couples met. Hence why May, June, July, not just because it's sunnier weather sometimes, but that's when a lot of people would have found out they were expecting a baby after the Beltane fires. So there's a rush of weddings in May, June, July. So that is our season for that. And obviously this was in sort of more druidic beliefs. This is when the green man, because the druidic beliefs have a lord and a lady, that would be the time when they would consummate their relationship, and this would mean that the grass would grow, the trees would be green, there would be fertility on the land. So it's all about, it's the dual aspect of the land and the personification of it. So that's Beltane, and the tradition is to have a Beltane fire on April the 30th, and couples leap over the fire to test their strength of their feeling for each other. So that's your Beltane fires. And obviously the goddess is as the lover, and she's wafting around feeling pretty damn good about herself, which I like. But we're actually in the water element there in the Avalonian calendar, which doesn't, I've always found that slightly strange. But as we move to Letha or Midsummer, so that's Midsummer's Eve, which is again a movable thing. It's based on the astronomical calendar. It is the longest day and the shortest night, and some people will celebrate the longest day, some people will celebrate the passing of the longest day and the shortest night. And it's quite early in the year. That's known as Letha, Litha. There's probably various other spellings of that. Call it what you will. I tend to call it Midsummer. That varies between the 20th and around the 22nd. It has sometimes, very rarely, been the 19th and no, it's not. It's between the 20th and the 21st, 22nd. And that is a time of just celebrating the sun. Everything then is golden and celebrating the sun, and it's a time for celebration. That's when the solstice, as we know it, is famous at Stonehenge. I went there once. Me and Mark went there with my best friend and her then partner and about 21,000 other people, and it was absolute carnage. It was so heaving. You were stepping over slumped, drunk and drug bodies. It wasn't an enjoyable experience in that. I was glad I went, but we didn't see the sun come up. That didn't happen. So this year, of course, I had my own little festival in the garden, me and Mark. So that was lovely. You've also then get an interesting point in the calendar called Midsummer's Day, which is actually about the 23rd, and that's a different folk day, and it's other cultures in, I think it's Eastern European and Russia, they tend to celebrate around the 6th and 7th of July is their midsummer. So it's all around the same time. So the whole idea of celebrating the power of the sun and the strength of the sun, and the fact that if we had the sun, the crops would be ripening. People wouldn't give you a shiny tuppence for the solstice at Stonehenge, says Jen. Well, do you know what? I'm in agreement with you. So from there we move round, and as we're coming into late July and August, we come to Lammas, which we've just had, and that's also known as Lunasar. Now, partly that's good. Hello, Sylvie. Partly that's due to the god Lu, L-U-G-H. I would try and spell Lunasar, but it's really complicated. It's something like L-U-G-H-N-A-S-A-D-H, but spellings and pronunciations do vary. So if you get stuck, Lammas. Traditionalists might say, oh, it's Lunasar and all the rest of it, but you call it what you want. Now that is usually the 1st of August, or that is the 1st of August. And again, we've now come into the earth energy, with the maiden has become the lover has become the mother. Now, obviously, you don't necessarily become a lover and then straight away a mother. Some of us do, but not necessarily. So that is again a time of, this is the first harvest. The crops are in the fields, and it's the mother. Her fertility is blooming. You know, the crops are growing taller, and the first harvest, you get things like your soft fruits will have been and gone, and you can start seeing your early crops coming through. And this is the Earth Mother, and we are in obviously the element of Earth right now. And you think of sort of this gloriously pregnant goddess ready to give birth to the land, to the crops, to the life of the autumn, all coming round. And then from there we move to what is autumn solstice, goodness me, autumn equinox, which again is another movable one that's based on the astronomical calendar. And that is, again, we come to the part of the year where the sun and the dark are in equal harmony. And for some people this marks quite a sad part of the year, because we know the dark nights are going to be coming all over again. Oh, sounded like gunfire. I'm sure it was just a bird scarer. Hope so. If I disappear, you know it wasn't. So that's between this one and the spring one. Because it's based on astronomical calendar, they go between the sort of, can be the 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd. So it's between the 19th and the 23rd, usually around the 21st. And we usually tend to stick with the 21st for the Sabbats of around that time. Sorry, I didn't say what Sabbat was. Sabbat, S-A-B-B-A-T. So it's a bit like Sabbath without the H. And they are the 8 feasts, the 8 festivals of the year in the neo-pagan Celtic realm. I shall come to that in a bit more detail later on. So that's Mabon, M-A-B-O-N, and that's that and Ostara. The jury's a little bit out on how traditional they are, how much of a new thing they've become, would they've been celebrated. Again, it's interesting that you get with Mabon that's been overlaced with Harvest Festival. Harvest Festival is traditionally around the end of September, so sort of that time of the spring, the autumn equinox in September. The real fruits, the hard fruits, the apples and the pears, the crops will have been gained. The grain and the wheat and the rye will have been harvested throughout Lammas coming up to there. So that's the second harvest, Mabon. And then obviously we go through. Now we're coming out of Earth now, and we're going into air, and the goddess, the Earth goddess, is now becoming the mother goddess is now becoming the crone. So obviously all of us feisty ladies are going, well, there's a bit more to being a mother and then being a crone. I don't suddenly go from being a happy blooming mother to being like this. Though motherhood does do that to you at times, I have to say. But then we come to the aspect of the crone, and that gap there between the mother and the crone is when people are talking about the new archetype of queens, and that's women of a certain age. You know, their families have grown up or are nearly grown up. They've come into their own. They are confident. They accept that their body is, it's biologically done the thing that bodies do. The queens, and I would say that myself and Jenny and Sylvie are probably wonderful queens. We're in that age. Sorry if I've just made you a bit older than you are, Sylvie. And I know Laura is just a little. She's a bit young for a queen. Sylvie might be a bit young for a queen, and I'm oldest, so I can say that anyway. I'm that stage in between. Well, we're not ready to go. Yes, I'm an old wise woman. I'm ready to go and sit in my hermitage and just be a hagless, a toothless old hag. No, I'm not ready for that yet. Doesn't mean I'm not getting wiser and more confident and going, yeah, do you know what? If you don't like it, off your trot. See you later, So as we come round to Samhain, which is spelled Samhain, and some people do call it Samhain. And again, if you say it wrong and someone mocks you, just give them a look and just think, well, I learned that through reading. But we pronounce it Samhain. Other people sometimes might have a slight different pronunciation of that, but don't anyone put you down. If you've learned it through reading and improving yourself, stuff them, is what I say. Oh, Sylvie is a queen. Oh, she is, because she's Sylvie Queenie. Yes, up the queens. Queenie, of course you are a queen, my darling. Of course you are. So that's obviously Halloween. So Halloween is the 31st of October. And the 1st of November is All Saints' Day. So Halloween means All Hallows' Eve. So that's where that came from. And at Samhain, I nearly said Samhain then, what a donut. At Samhain, this is when the veil is thin. The mother goddess has had a brief moment of being queen, so we need to work this one out for us queens here. And she's coming to the crone energy, which is air. That's the chill, cool air of knowledge and winter. And the veil is thin then, and that's traditionally a really good time to communicate with the ancestors, talk to the ancestors. And there's a lot of places that have, like the Mexicans, the Day of the Dead. It's not the same thing. And I love you. Are you doing anything for Samhain in Medway? Not in Medway, Eleanor. I haven't spoken to you for ages, but we will be in Maidstone. If you go on Maidstone Pagans, there'll be stuff on there. We're doing an online ritual thing. Anybody's welcome. Just find us at Maidstone Pagans. I haven't spoken to you for ages. So that is Samhain, and this is when they say the veil is really, really thin and the worlds are really close to each other, hence why we dress up as ghosts and ghoulies and all these things for Halloween, when actually it's oh, look, excellent. Obviously it's to do with, you have the Mexican Day of the Dead. I'm not quite sure what date that is. I should have looked it up, but I was a bit late home from camp because we ended up having a cup of tea and just sitting chilling because it was so lovely. And obviously then that is where the ancestor veneration comes in. Some people will sit and they have what they call the dumb supper, and they will lay a place for a recently deceased ancestor, or the ancestors lay a plate up with the knife and the fork at the table. We usually have a little Halloween feast. We usually have some lovely wine, and I make a spicy pumpkin soup, which goes down very well with himself, the trucker. And we set up a place at the table for our ancestors. And last year I was on my own for Samhain. Mark, the trucker, was working away, and I'll tell you something I did which was really, really beautiful. I think I did blog about it, but I got my family tree out, and I started with my grandparents, who are all passed. I'm lucky both my mum and dad, touch wood, my mum and dad are still here. 2nd of November. What's 2nd of November, Sylvie? Is that Day of the Dead? That must be Day of the Dead. Thank you, darling. And I sat and went through each grandparent and remembered all the things, spoke to them as though they were there and said, oh, do you remember when we did this? And talked about the things we did, like with my granddad, sitting poking the run of beans through the hole in the washing line. You know where the hook bit where you lace the cord around on the old washing lines, that had rusted off. And apparently I used to sit and poke run of beans through there, and they grew sometimes. So things do grow in the dark. Always remember that if you're in a dark place. And sit and have a conversation with my nan about the things we used to do, and my other nan. And then I went out to the other grandparents. One had passed before I was born, but I was sort of recited all the things I could remember about him that my dad's told me. And then I went further back, and obviously we've done a lot of family history, but I really enjoyed spending time with them and talking to them and saying about what I knew about them. Little facts like my mum's grandmother was part of the Fawcett Society, which was the more genteel way of women getting the vote. So I said to her, thank you for being part of that. Thank you for doing that your way. You obviously didn't want to go and be a glass smashing, rebellious suffragette, but you wanted the vote, so you did it your way. So I had a conversation with her about that, and those where I just knew there's my mum's about 3 or 4 times grandmother, and she was 21 and she had a baby and she died 3 months later. And I just said to her about how I felt for her, that she was so, you know, what she did and how wonderful this son became, and you know, the people that have come from this son and how proud she must be. So you don't need to know a lot about them to do that. Anyway, that's a bit of a waffle there, but I did really enjoy that. So obviously from then we moved to Yule, which most people know about, and that is winter solstice, which again is a 20th, 21st, 22nd, usually the 21st, just before Christmas. And obviously no coincidence there that the pagan calendar has been overlaid with Christianity, which is, you know, I'm not Christian bashing, because that's what people do. That's what every victor will always do. So obviously the Christmas is the 25th, as we all know, so that ties in there. And again, winter solstice is when we have got the shortest day and the longest night. And what we do is, because I like a bit of a festival and a party, it doesn't take much for me to have a bit of a bash. We have a solstice supper, and it's me and the trucker, my mum and dad, the kids and their other halves if they're free. So sometimes Sophie's at work, so she doesn't always come. My best friend and increasingly her grandchildren want to come along to solstice supper with Auntie, me, because I'm a great auntie. Interestingly, her granddaughter thought I was called Great Auntie Claire because I was amazing, great, not because I'm her mum's auntie, but I'll take the being great bit. So we have a supper there, and I tend to, it's similar sort of things. It's easy stuff, and it's just we sit there and we have solstice music. And what we always do is we've got fire pits, chimneys. We're both fire signs, we're both Aries, so we're a bit fire freaks. We always have a fir cone, and we write a wish and tie it to the fir cone and put it in the fire, and I sort of coat it in egg white and dip it in sugar so it looks sparkly like a snow on it, so there's no chemicals going in. Though from time to time I do get some magic flame and chuck in there, especially when the little children are here, because the flames come out pink and violet and green, and it's like, oh, Auntie Claire does magic, so you know, has to be done. And obviously it's still the Caliac, the crone, it's the cold, it's the biting wind, and that sort of time, the dark time there, is always a good time to really consider what you don't want anymore. To think about, you know, what did I do this year? What don't I want? You know, this happened and I wasn't happy about that, or some things aren't meant to stay with you forever and ever, and you let them go. And that's a good time to strip yourself down bare to your soul and reconsider. And I don't think it's any coincidence that obviously New Year's Eve is a time for resolutions. I know Jen, who's watching, she always does a 100 list New Year's Eve and the things she wants to do that year. And I think that's something that, it's not resolutions that you can break. I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to stop smoking, I'm going to stop biting my nails. Don't beat yourself up and give yourself I must do. Give yourself things that you want to do. Things like, I mean, for example, on mine, I've never been to the Globe Theatre in London. I mean, this year everybody's lists must have gone right out the window. But that sort of idea and that sort of feeling of hunkering down and surviving it, and thinking, you know, you've got longer nights and you don't see people because the weather's so bad, and it's a chance to focus on what you want to achieve the following year. Not, you know, you want to get a 70k job, not that you want to win the lottery and buy a massive house, though that would be very welcome if Lady Luck would like that. But you know, things like, I want to do pottery, or I want to learn Reiki, those sort of things that will help you, your soul, your spirit. So that's the wheel of the year. And it's interesting that it's come about, and it's a lot of people, they call it the Celtic wheel of the year. But a lot of people will argue that, of course, it's neo-pagan, because none of us were around before the Romans appeared with their own particular brand of Christianity, which is different to other Christianity. So none of us were here. We can channel who we want. You know, I can say, yes, I'm channeling Boudica, who I like to call Bodicea. You know, that I know this, no one knows. So these are Sabbats that people have put back in place. So it's a neo-pagan one. You know, there is documentation for pretty much all of them, apart from Ostara and Mabon. They're the ones that might have been put in. I mean, about every 6.5 weeks, 6 to 7 weeks, there is a bit of a do, bit of a festival, bit of a reason to all get together, have a glass of mead, celebrate something. And what's wrong with that? I think that's awesome. Personally, I'm completely up for that, especially the mead. No surprise there. So that is because in the Druid tradition, and if anybody is watching and knows and I've got this wrong, please correct me. I'm happy to be corrected. I was going to check with Gij before I came on, but I just didn't have time. I literally skidded in. I haven't even made myself a mug of tea. Like I said, I'm literally sitting here minging. If I haven't got this right, apologies to anybody if I offend you, but they will follow. Some people have the 4 fire festivals, as they call them, which are Imbolc, Beltane, Lammas, and Samhain. Now, they are not the astronomical ones. The astronomical ones that are dependent on the position of the planets is Ostara or spring equinox, summer solstice or Letha, autumn equinox or Mabon, and Yule, winter solstice. So some people will follow the 4 astronomical festivals. Some people only follow the 4. Why am I waving my hands at you? The 4. the 4 fire festivals. Everybody does their own thing. If you're a complete greedy guts like me, I'll have all 8. Thank you very much. Every 6 or 7 weeks, I have a reason to get together with some of my favourite people in the whole world. I drag my family in where I can. And yeah, sometimes they're interested in it, sometimes they're not. So whatever you celebrate, and I've had people say to me before, I'm not interested in the solstices and the equinoxes. I just like the fire festivals. And they tend to be the ones that perhaps people think are more Celtic, to my understanding. Again, if I'm wrong, someone correct me. I really don't mind. And obviously another interesting thing, I kicked the table, is obviously that's Northern Hemisphere. So it's something that occurred to me driving back from the camp, is that in the Southern Hemisphere, the Australians, I don't think I've got, I have people that read my blog that are in Australia and New Zealand, but I don't know anybody's watching now because they're probably in the middle of the night, aren't they? It's going to be midnight gone. So for them, they are currently coming up to the spring equinox. So our autumn equinox is their spring equinox. So they will call that Ostara, although they're not celebrating Easter. And obviously our summer equinox in June is the peak of their winter, and that is their winter solstice. So that will be their Yule. And that completely does my head in. That's, how does that work? But I guess if you're following the wheel of the year, you're following the wheel of the land. And I think that's the huge thing about this wheel of the year, is that it follows the patterns of the land, which we know has changed over the last couple of 100 years, whether that's global warming, whether it is just that we are a bit close to the sun. And I don't know, jury's out on that. But obviously, our summers are getting a bit earlier, aren't they? I mean, we had a cracking April and May and June, and it's like winter. We're still in August. I know it's bank holiday, so it's going to rain because it's the unwritten law in Britain. But I have people on Facebook this week going, is it too early to put the heating on, asking for a friend kind of thing? And I'm thinking, no, because it is blooming cold. So that's a quick run through of the wheel of the year. It's quite an interesting subject. And if you are interested, I suggest that you look at how it overlaps with other festivals that are going on. Because there's Michaelmas, which is Michaelmas as well, which is in the Christian calendar, is also the autumn equinox. So there's an interesting layering of things, and obviously there's loads of stuff we don't know as well. So anyway, that's me for this week. I'm going to go and have a shower and get half a ton of spiders and mud and ash and all out of my hair. Hope that helped some of you. Hope it interested you. Next week I'll be back to my normal time of 11. And I have got Tina back with me, the lovely, lovely Tina Booth. And next week, sorry, she's going to be talking about journeying to the goddess. And I think she's going to do some work with us about working to find the goddess or the deity that you work with as an individual. So that's what we'll be doing next week, back at 11. And then Jacqueline is also coming back in September, and she's going to be talking about Christianity and paganism on goddess beliefs. And that again, that will be fascinating, because we didn't get around to it last time because we were just talking about so many other things, but that will be how she combines the two, because she does some fantastic work and prayers and blessings all in one. And she combines you're welcome, Sylvie. And she combines a saint that's local to where she is, that she particularly finds interesting, as a goddess. And she's got lots and lots to say. And if anybody wants anything they want to know, feel free to tune in and ask Tina. And I haven't set a date for Jacqueline yet, but it will be September. Tina's next week on the 6th. But if anybody's got anything they want to know, or somebody they want me to have a chat to, or you want to have a chat about your beliefs, get in touch, message me. Thanks, Jen. Tina will be fascinating. I don't think she even touched on half what she wanted to talk about. I've got visions of her coming back in October and November and December, and the same with Jacqueline. I think everybody could listen to those two for ages. So that's me. I'm going to go and get cleaned up, finish unpacking. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for your support. I just do this for fun, really, and I just think it's nice to hear other people's thoughts and ideas on things. And I'm quite eclectic. I grab that bit from there. And like we were saying, when I said Tina and I were talking about the elements and where they were in the wheel, I'd forgotten that she does do it slightly differently. And I've kind of picked up the druidy circle. I think I do mine. That's from sort of Mace and Pagans. I think I've ended up doing mine druidy and witchcrafty, which at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. As long as you are respecting an element and calling goddesses or gods or whatever your beliefs are of that element and putting it in your practice, does it matter how you do it? It's the same as us saying, we're coming up to autumn equinox and Mabon, and everybody in Australia going, mate, what you on about? This is... we're coming to spring, stuff's starting to grow here, and it's still as pertinent to them as it is for us. Oh, hello, Pete. I must just say thank you to Pete, because he sent to camp a wodge of 40 times that he no longer needs. We've divided amongst the three of us, Pete, and we're going to swap them all around and have our own 40 times mini library. So go back to the beginning, Pete, listen to me waffle, and I hope you're all okay. It's lovely to catch up with you all. Yeah, Jenny, everyone's paths are so interesting, and I suppose you could have this conversation with a variety of Christians, Buddhists, Sikhs, whoever. I mean, I used to work with a lady who was a Sikh, and I used to be really interested finding out what her beliefs were, and they would differ from the next person. The basics would be the same, but her actual understanding and interpretation of it would be very different. But yeah, so if anyone's got any bright ideas or would say, I'd love to know about such and such, give me a shout and I'll see if I can rack my brain and not dig somebody up, that sounds awful. Find somebody that will talk about it. So take care. Excuse the state of me. I promise I'll be a bit better looking next time. Love to you all. Bye.